and weighting. This is a standard of pretty much every market research project out there. Traditionally, it comes in the form of census rep, or you want women who have teenage children or senior citizens. You decide which part of the population you want to talk to. And we've already seen that geodemographics are not widely available with social media data. So it means we can't do our sampling in that way. But sampling is still massively important, and I'll show you a few slides on why. But in our case, since we can't sample on demographics, what we do sample on is website sources. So we each have our own favorite places where we like to chat online. Some people like Facebook, some people like Twitter, other people like forums. We all have a space that best suits what we want. If we want photos or videos or just plain text, we go to the places that are important to us. That means that we can actually do sampling based on website sources. So let's have a look at why this actually matters. So here is a bar chart for a bunch of different brands. The first bar, the blue bar, represents opinions gathered from Facebook. The second bar, the red bar, is opinions gathered from YouTube. So for Walmart, that very first pair of bars, we've gone onto the internet and we've collected data from everywhere and then scored it according to how positive or negative it is. So in this case, let's say about 35% of opinions that we gathered about Walmart on Facebook, about 35% of those opinions were positive. Similarly, we'll say 34% of opinions gathered from YouTube were positive. So in the case of Walmart, whether we gathered opinions from Facebook or YouTube, they were similarly positive. So here's Kindle Fire. Is that red bar the same as the blue bar? Not even close. Let's say 85% of opinions about the Kindle Fire on Facebook were positive. About 15% of opinions gathered from YouTube were positive. So from YouTube, that would be commentary. So let's say somebody showed a video about their Kindle Fire and tons of people below are making all kinds of comments. So those would be the measurements there. So what you do see here is opinions can be massively different depending on where you gather that data from. So you can't just look at Twitter and say, oh, I've got the answer. And you can't just look at Facebook, oh, got the answer. It gives you a portion of the picture, not the entire picture, and certainly not necessarily a representative part of the picture. So let's take it in combination with sample size. So that top blue line, that is the total sample size for iPad 2. Guess what's being announced today? 3. Total sample size on a daily basis. So you see day 1, day 2, day 3, all the way across. The red line, I'll just point that one out, which is this line here. This is sample size for Twitter. Then the green line, this is sample size for Facebook. So keep in mind what we saw on the last slide. Sentiment can be very different depending on where you gather it from. So in this case, what we have right here is sentiment is dependent on Twitter. Whatever the folks on Twitter were saying, that would basically be the overall sentiment. And then over here, whatever folks were saying on Facebook, that would generally end up being the sentiment about the product, simply based on what folks were saying in Facebook. So imagine Twitter and Facebook, they own the data. They're just not kindly sharing it because they want to be nice. They own their data. They decide on a daily basis, hourly basis, how much they want to share, if they want to share, who they want to share. So if they feel like giving out 1 million records today and 5,000 records tomorrow, that is purely up to them. So you could see these daily sample sizes going up and down because people were chatting more or less, or because Twitter or Facebook or whomever was releasing more or less data. So it's hard to know, did opinions about a brand change because there was an actual change in opinions, or because the volume from one or another source just happened to go up or down on a particular day. So that brings us into weighting. Just with traditional surveys, the weighting possibilities are absolutely endless. Sure, there's a few basic: census rep, internet rep, moms with kids, and we're all used to those very basic ones. But there are thousands beyond that, and every single sampling weighting design is completely dependent on what the research objective is. The first one, very basic: let's not weight at all. Let's not do anything. This is a very common thing for people to do when they are brand new to social media research. They don't know what the data looks like, they don't know where it comes from, they don't know how much from where or anything. So at this point, they really just want to see what's happening. Let me see what the data really looks like. And after that, when I feel comfortable, when I understand it better, then I'll move on to something that better reflects a research objective. So in this case, if you aren't going to do any weighting, you need to take into account that Twitter can change everything. Only about 10% of internet users around the world actually use Twitter. 10%. But if you don't do anything, sometimes Twitter data will actually represent about 50% of your data, half of your data set. The folks on Twitter tweet so darn much, such volumes, that they can massively overwhelm a data set. So think back to your surveys. Generally, we kind of want something census rep, 51-49 female male. When the survey returns come back in, it's probably 70% female, 30% male. That's okay, we like that. We're okay with census rep at 70-30. I don't see a single green card or a single shaking in agreement. No, we're not satisfied with that. If we want census rep, that means 51-49. It doesn't mean 70-30. So in this case, even if Twitter is 50, we know it should be somewhere around 10. So if you're not going to do any weighting, at least be conscious that there are some portions of the data that will account for far more or far less than what you would expect from a census or internet rep kind of data for social media data. So here's another option. We've got, these are sample sizes, let's say weekly sample sizes. First week we had a total of 239 comments about a brand. 38 of them were from Twitter, 90 were from Facebook, and then we had a bunch of other comments from elsewhere. And you can see from a week-to-week basis, sometimes there was more from Twitter, sometimes there was more from Facebook. It wasn't consistent over time. It could be because people were more likely to talk about it in one place or another on a particular week, or it could be that Twitter or Facebook decided to release more or less on those particular days. Who knows what actually happened? So something we can do is have a look at what are the averages across all of the weeks. So there was normally about 32 per week, which is 7% of the overall data set. There was normally about 196, which is about 45% of the data set. So one of the options available to us is to say, okay, let's just leave Twitter constant at 7% over the whole time frame. Let's leave Facebook at around 45% over the whole time frame. And then we know, regardless of where the changes are coming from, the opinions will be relevant to each other from week to week. We can make comparisons of the sentiment data without knowing whether Twitter or Facebook let out more or less data on any particular day. So those are just 3 options. As I said, there's many, many more, and it will depend on what your objective is, but we can work through all of that stuff.